Welcome to another episode of the Coffee Break Podcast, where our mission is to share business ideas, practices, and strategies while we enjoy a cup of coffee or a cherry sundrop. Either one. But we're going to be having a good conversation today with our training director, Thomas Heavey, all about team meetings, how we operate with our team meetings, what those team meetings are about, and the actual execution for it. So really diving into the business practices side of the podcast. We're going to be all about that, and team meetings is going to be our conversation today. You ready?
Yes, sir.
All right. We'll be back right after this.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
All right, welcome back. Thomas, thank you very much for being here today.
Absolutely.
Looking nice and fancy in your blue shirt there. Appreciate you joining us. So you've obviously been a guest on the podcast before, but you do know that we have a recurring segment called Rapid Fire, where we give you 5 randomly selected questions with unknown point values just to get under your skin a little bit. So we're going to jump into that. Are you ready?
Absolutely.
Okay. So here is question number 1. What is the best part about your day?
Getting home and the kids. As soon as I get home and the kids are that, hey, daddy, that's the absolute best part of the day every day.
Yeah?
Absolutely.
All 3 of them?
All 3 of them. Well,
not one more than the other?
I've got 2 teenagers, so it kind of depends on how their day went. Teenagers' days can go good and bad. It's not always, hey, daddy anymore, but that's the absolute best part of the day.
All right, number 2. What is an actual nickname that people call you?
Tommy.
That's it. I call you Tommy.
Tommy, that's the only one I've got.
It's funny because I only ever knew you as Thomas until I met some other people that knew you outside of work, and they kept calling some guy named Tommy, and I had no idea who they were talking to.
And there's a real distinct line. Somehow right after I graduated high school, it went from Tommy to Thomas, and I can usually tell. I never thought about it, but I can usually tell how long I've known somebody because of that distinct line from them calling me Tommy or Thomas.
Well, there you have it. Let's see here. What game show would you be super awesome at?
Sports Jeopardy.
Sports Jeopardy.
Yeah, it was on ESPN for a while. They don't do it anymore, but it was Sports Jeopardy.
You got that much knowledge about sports. What is the funniest thing that's ever happened to you on a family vacation?
Funniest thing that's ever happened to me on a family vacation. The funniest thing that's ever happened to me as far as my family is concerned is when my littlest was about 14 or 16 months old, maybe a little older than that because he could reach my seatbelt.
Okay.
But I could not reach him.
Okay.
And all the way to Myrtle Beach, he thought it was fun to reach up and pull my seatbelt back and then me try to reach behind the seat to hit him, to get him to quit. And
he was tightening it up on you.
Yes, he was tightening it up on me. And he then found that made his mom and his brother and sister laugh.
Yeah.
So we did this for 3.5 hours to the beach. So
that's actually pretty funny, though.
That they really enjoyed it. I maybe not so much.
All right, last one here. Let's see. Who is your celebrity lookalike?
There is a news anchor that a lot of people tell me I look like and sound like, but I do not remember what his name is.
A news anchor.
He is a news anchor, and a lot of people tell me I look and sound like him, but I truly cannot remember what his name is.
That's interesting. Huh. I could see that.
He's a national news anchor. I want to say he's on CNN or Fox or one of the big networks, but I don't remember who it is.
All right, if you look like anybody, put it in the comments below so that we can figure out who this news anchor is. All right, cool. You passed. Congratulations. It was a score of 437. So.
Wow, that's a pretty big drop from last time. And I answered all 5 questions this time. I'm going to have to debate this scoring system.
It's unknown point value, so I apologize. All right, we want to get into the kind of the meat of the conversation today, and it's all about team meetings, why we do team meetings, how we do team meetings, and what's the benefit of it. So we'll kind of dive into those each independently. But first of all, give us a little bit of a understanding of how many of these type of meetings that we have on a weekly basis, and then we'll kind of dive into those.
So we obviously have 3 major team meetings. We have some smaller meetings, but I would more call those huddles or even less than huddles, more just, but there's 3 major meetings that we have. One is an all-hands meeting on Monday morning that kicks off our entire week. It is a quick phone call meeting. Our second meeting is our all-hands team meeting, which happens on Wednesday mornings, and that's an hour-and-a-half meeting.
Yep.
That is by far the most impactful. It does take the most time. And then we also have a leadership huddle that follows that meeting on Wednesdays, kind of just to regroup with the leadership. So those are the 3 major meetings that we have each week.
So the first one is the conference call, the kind of all-team conference call. It's just a quick little gathering. Kind of give us a little bit of insight on that, because from a standpoint, I think we've been doing that. Oh man, if I were to try to remember back, probably at least 6 or 7 years is been how long that's been going on. Since you've been involved with it and you've seen it, how has it impact the start of the week? What's the value add? What's the purpose of it?
It really sets the tone for what we're going to do that week. If the week is really, really busy, everybody knows that Monday morning before they get to their first job, before they get here to the office and really get going. If the week has a big project in it, if the week has any of those kind of things, that tone gets set Monday morning first thing, which I think is really important, because Monday through Friday, after Friday, a lot of people unwind, they decompress. Setting that tone Monday morning and getting us back ready for what we have through the week is a really, really big, it's really impactful for what we do.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of other companies in different industries, but they'll do their all-team meeting or their staff meeting on a Monday morning in the same sense to get everybody gathered together. And we've been doing ours on Wednesday morning, which we'll talk about in a little bit, but we've been doing ours on Wednesdays for so long. The Monday morning thing was something that I think at a point just figured out, like, hey, as we're getting started for the week, there was a gap of kind of knowing what was going on, because you were expected to essentially be clued in on Wednesday what was supposed to be happening for next week, and then you had the weekend, and Monday just pops up, and it's like, I have no idea what's going on. So it was just really a rally cry to say, hey, this is what we're doing. This is what we're all here, and these are the focus points for the next couple of days.
Another very impactful thing is that we're a 24/7 company.
Yeah.
So our weekend does still happen, and a lot of guys are unplugged through that. So we're able to plug them back in first thing Monday morning in case anything major happened over the weekend. That way they will know what's going on with that. And I think that's really a big part of that call is anything that you missed between Friday and Monday, you're able to get reset and back on pace for.
So just because people that are watching or listening to this, they may be operating their own businesses, their own teams. What the components of this, and we can kind of chat back and forth. I know we use our Ring Central phone system to do this, so we have a published number that we utilize, and one of our goals is to move that over to a Google Hangout type section. But right now we use our Ring Central, which is a virtual phone system. Everybody calls into that number. It shows who is all on the call, and everybody can communicate so that people can be muted, and it's not just a random chaos of 30 people or 35 people talking at the same time. So we have that. And then the actual specifics of the call has been set up as an agenda. So how does that flow, just for the folks that are going, well, how do I structure that? Is it just one person that's just kind of randomly talking? How does that work?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that Ring Central does show you who's on the call and who's not on the call, because when I first started, the call started with roll call, and roll call could take several minutes when people tried to figure out how to unmute their phone to say that they were there, so on and so forth, and then following back up. So we were able to give that time back, and we don't waste that time anymore by moving to Ring Central, which has been very impactful.
We used to use, when we first started, a system called, it was an app called freeconferencecall.com or something like that. And that's the reason why, is you could publish a number where you could get, more than 6 people on a call, but you didn't know who was there. And so that was all right, tell us who's here. And we had a couple of different iterations of that well before you even started, where it was just like, tell us who's here. And then everybody would say it at the same time. And so then we had to change it to, all right, is this person here? Is this person here? Is this person here? And then you'll just wait. And then the awkward silence, if they weren't, it was not a good thing, but it was part of the necessary components at the time.
The necessary evil, and it's so fun to see the growth that's happened. Obviously, if we tried to do roll call with 35 employees, that would be your entire time that you had for the call each morning. So as we grow, figuring those things out, it's been nice. And I guess you don't realize it till you're having this conversation and look back and think, I really don't miss the roll call thing at all, because that was such a waste of time that we now get to do more impactful things. But now the kind of the schedule is you usually start the call.
Yep.
Obviously, if you're traveling or abroad, somebody else will take that kickoff, but you usually kick it off. Super positive energy is one of the things that I really like about the call that you give every Monday morning. Because it is setting up our week as a company. So I really feel your energy each time that we do the call, that it helps the entire team set the pace for what we're doing that week. But then after you give basically just a general information from 30,000 feet, then the dispatch and the service manager will give kind of the nitty gritty. People that are on vacation, they will give the nitty gritty about any big projects that are going to impact people.
Yeah.
If we have any weather issues, if we have any traffic issues, obviously if Charlotte has anything going on that's going to create where you can or cannot get through parts of town, that's a really good time to do that. And then project management will come through and give us a quicker overview of any major projects that are going on. And then sales and purchasing will pretty much finish up the call, just letting us know where they're at, what they've got going on. That way everybody has a good feel for everything through the company, but we try to keep it to a quick and very precise call. Get that information out there and get guys on the road.
If everything goes according to plan and we're on track, it should be between 7:45 and 7:55. If that 10-minute section there, that we should be able to get anything in and out. Sometimes it's a little shorter than that. Sometimes it's a little longer than that, just depending on what's happening. But like you said, a lot of the information, even for myself, for you, when it reflects to training or whatever, it's just, hey, we've got this many people out, or this many people, everybody's here, and we have these 3 projects happening simultaneously that are going to soak up a lot of people. So, customer service is now made aware of kind of some scheduling, just some things like that, hey, I'm getting my mind engaged. I'm getting ready for Monday morning because our phones start ringing at 8 a.m. So it's just everything that we can do to be prepped well up ahead of that time frame.
Absolutely. And like I said, it really does just set the tone for the week. I think that is, if you took anything about what our goal is out of that call, it's to set the tone for what we've got going on that week. And I learn a ton of information about that call, and I'm here in the office every day.
Yeah.
You don't realize, as we've grown, how much you don't know about what other segments of the company are doing, where when we were smaller, it was very easy to know not everything, but most everything that was going on. There's entire projects now that happen that I may not be aware of at all if it wasn't for that call.
How have you, and we kind of touched on a little bit, it could be one of the things that I think that have happened well is that we've tried to adapt over time. So you mentioned it earlier, we used to have roll call. We tried to solve that problem. Trying to keep things engaged, focused, and intentional in that communication. Where do you think that is kind of in the direction where it is right now? And then what could you say if, objectively, right? I'm just objectively saying, hey, well, what can we do to make that better going forward?
I think one of the things that, and me and you have been part of the conversation, I know there's been a lot of people that have been part of conversations about making that call impactful to where we're at size-wise.
Yeah.
And when the company was 15 people, it was a whole lot easier to get that information across. And now that we're over 35 people, we have to kind of change the flow of how we're getting that information out there.
Yeah.
And I think that takes a lot of times just being self-aware of what you've got going on as a company and how far that information actually reaches through that call, and then setting the goals of the call versus setting the goals of the call and then not understanding why the information didn't get out there.
Gotcha. So just a kind of a recap on this component of communication is the original concept came from, listening to other people talk about stand-up meetings or just kind of a quick start of the day rally. I remember, this is going back years ago. I was actually doing service work at a facility not too far from here. And there was a sales team that was having a stand-up meeting to start of the day. So I was in there working on some locks in another area of the building, but they were having this stand-up meeting, and it was like a 10-minute, just high energy. This is what we've got. These are our goals. This is what we're going to be doing. This is our targets. And then they broke out of that room and dispersed and went about their day, and they all kind of had a game plan. I was like, it was just, well, that makes sense. Like now they all know what they're supposed to be working towards. And so that was kind of part of that. We obviously couldn't do a stand-up meeting like that here because everybody our majority is mobile. So yes, to be able to get everybody on the same page, it was to get on a phone call together. So that was kind of the intent of it. And we've been, like I said, been doing that every Monday morning for many, many years, with the exception of if there's a holiday or we're closed on a Monday, and then we always roll it to the next day, so Tuesday of that holiday. So any pieces of information or any other tips that you may want to give to anybody that's saying, hey, this would be great, we should try to figure out how to do this?
I think it's really important that at least every 6 months that you look at what's happening as far as information's coming out on the call and make sure that it's still relevant. Mm-hmm. Because as you grow, as you change, as your business changes, what you don't want to do is pass information to people that's been passed for the last 6 months and they no longer tune into.
Sure.
So you don't have to change it for no reason, but if you're going to make changes, try to make that information relevant. Don't waste people's time giving them information that they don't need just because you feel like you have to fill a gap in that call.
All right, so let's move on to our next piece of communication, which is our all-team meeting that we have every Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. So that's staple. That's been there. It's been happening for longer than I can remember. And I can give you a little bit of reason why it got started, and then we can kind of talk about where we are right now. But it originally got started because when we were a small organization, less than 10 people, we used to get together for lunch almost every day. I mean, that was a staple that we had, lunch every day. And as we got closer to that 10 employee category, it was becoming even more complicated. The size of our projects were increasing. We couldn't all get together every day. And so there was an understanding that our communication gap was spreading out, because when you were meeting together every day for lunch, you could pass information along very easily. And so everybody agreed, let's get together early morning. And I'm sure there was a lot of factors at play, but Wednesday was the day. And so we scheduled 7 a.m. on Wednesday mornings, and we would actually meet at a little restaurant because that was well before the times that we actually had an office. So we would get together, have breakfast, and then just talk. And there was not a lot of structure around it at that point other than just kind of meeting for breakfast and talking, but it was an established weekly time frame that we all got together. Now, fast forward probably 10 years. Where are we at now?
It's not that. It's not that in any way, shape, or form, which one of the really cool things about shooting this week is this was the first Wednesday that we had our all hands meeting in our new meeting space.
Yeah.
So our old meeting space set, I think it was 16 people, 14 people.
Comfortably.
Yes, comfortably. And the new meeting space, we're looking at, we can at least sit 60 people.
Yeah.
With a company where we're having between 30 and 40 people at each meeting, that other room was becoming very, very, very uncomfortable.
Yeah. It was very crowded, and it got a little steamy in there.
Got a little steamy in there. The last few meetings, there were people literally standing outside of the room looking in.
Yeah.
Like you would think about your kid's PTA meeting at the school. So obviously moving into the new space was huge. But it is very structured now, and the structure has changed very similar to the way we do with the conference call. About every 6 months to a year, we really look at the structure and we look at kind of the goals, and we'll talk about those in a few minutes, but we look at that structure and let it evolve with the company.
Yeah.
So now we have 3 presenters at the beginning of the meeting, and then we split up for an hour into smaller groups because there's so much information that doesn't need to go to everybody in the company anymore. And we're able to get better training and better information passed by splitting up into smaller groups.
Yeah. So going back to some of the origin of the meeting, because I'm processing a lot of that in my head right now. We at a point started doing some product type training. Hey, this is a new product. This is how you install this. Hey, a reminder, this is how this goes together. This is how this works. Maybe talk about some different keying systems. And it was also a time where we could have follow-up. Because, again, you were less than 10 people. It was a majority technicians. We had a dispatcher at the time that was maintaining our schedule and said, hey, these are the projects that we have going on, and these are some things that are kind of hanging out there that we need to follow up on, and then some technical side. So that was kind of the structure of that whole meeting. It was very much focused on projects and product.
Yes.
And now we're kind of shifted.
And just how fast things are happening. When I started almost 4 years ago, it was over an hour of it was product and technical.
Yeah.
And there was about 20 minutes that was vision and those kind of things. And some of that hasn't changed, but what has changed is then there were probably 8 or 9 techs in a room of 15 people.
Yeah.
And there was only a handful of support staff.
Yeah.
Now the support staff has grown with the amount of techs, and it's completely not impactful to have accounting learning how to install a NextTouch. That doesn't impact them in any way. So we're able to A, split that up, but B, we're able to look at that product stuff and decide when that needs to be done during that all hands time and when that needs to be done in specialized training.
Yeah. And one of the interesting things, and I've mentioned this multiple times with people in our organization, I enjoy coming to our Wednesday morning meetings now because I get to learn so much about everything that's happening within the organization, because there's different departments that are presenting that are not technical. They are process driven for the organization. It's like, oh, well, that's interesting, and that's how that impacts that. And you get to kind of see how all these pieces start to connect together for the entire organization. And it's very much more so on process and how we do things as an organization, less on the technical side, which at a point posed an issue, right? Because we said, all right, we went from all technical and project driven to all process driven, and we lost the technical ongoing training. So how did we?
We've kind of found a happy medium. I'm just going to kind of give the rundown of how the meeting goes.
Sure.
Obviously, we start the meeting with prayer, and after the prayer, we do what we call one positive thing.
Yep.
And one positive thing is we go around the room and let everybody say something positive that's happened to them this week. That can be in their personal life. That can be in their professional life. That can be that the Steelers won last night. It's whatever they find positive that week. And that really just sets a positive tone, which I've really coveted that since I've been here. I think it's really, really neat to start the meeting being extremely positive. So after that, and that should take between about the first 10 minutes of the meeting. After that, we have 2 10-minute segments that we now break up over a rotation through different departments.
I want to interrupt you real quick and go back to the one positive thing, because
yes.
I'm sitting here and I'm trying to be a listener at the same time as we're having this conversation. And if I'm listening to this podcast, I'm like, what? Hold on a second. What is that about, and why is that important? And or maybe I'm already running a team meeting and I want to try to figure out how to implement something like that. So let's back into the why behind that, because we implemented that several years ago because we were starting the meetings with a lot of drudgery, right? And then you were trying to build off of that. And it was like, well, let's try to figure out a way we can start the meeting in a positive manner. And so that was something that we introduced. And the reason I wanted to bring it up is because I want to encourage anybody that says, hey, this is something we want to implement into our team meetings. It's awkward when you first start. Like the first couple of probably the first couple of months that we were doing that, it was not well received nor understood how to really utilize it. Hey, just tell us something positive that's happening. I woke up this morning, yeah. All right. Okay. And it was a hard pull at the very beginning, and to try to be able to see where it is at now is exciting. But if someone is thinking about trying to introduce that, don't get discouraged early on, because it's not an easy thing to implement, and you have to have some longevity behind it. But anyways,
and I want to kind of follow up on what you just said. Is one of the other things is an all hands meeting that the doors are closed from the outside is obviously where we're going to have discussions about our flaws.
Sure.
So if you're going to bring up your flaws and you're going to have to intentionally talk about those and highlight those, starting that in a positive manner sets the tone. Once again, just like the Monday morning call, if you set the tone positive, we all have flaws. We all have mistakes that need to be fixed and problem areas in our business and processes that need to be better.
Yeah.
But starting that conversation in a positive way versus this is what's wrong creates a better feel, and you get a better interaction with trying to improve processes.
Very true, very true. And we've seen that, because you can easily get into this is a staff meeting, we're all getting together and we're going to hash out all the issues that we have. And then you walk out of the meeting just feeling kind of defeated, and well, that's not exciting. All right, let's go get the day going, So having that positivity part of it really changes the focal point, I believe. But anyways.
Absolutely. So then, like I said, the next two segments are about 10 minutes each. We try to keep it right around that. And if a team has longer that they need, we try to make adjustments to make that work. But those two segments will be basically an update from a department. So I'll take our app development department just as an example.
Yep.
And they change so many things in maybe a 4-week period between the times that they get to present, that they're able to give us some highlights of that. And they're also able to give us some direction of where they're going.
Yeah.
That way, when you run across something, you're going in the same direction they are. And one of our techs on the road may not see our app developer for weeks at a time.
Yeah.
Other than on a Wednesday morning and see them in the meeting, but they don't have a true feeling of where they're going with something. But on that Wednesday morning, when they present, they get a lot of questions afterwards. They get to have a lot of interaction, and everybody sees which direction they're going in.
Yeah, so it's just a point of communication, but for each department, and allotting time for that has been very, very impactful. So some of the things that has changed just recently, we used to have a quote unquote operations meeting that was once a month, and it was really just the format for that month, for that meeting, for that week, and it was all the departments giving an update. And then several months ago, somebody came up with the suggestion that said, hey, what if we break that up into smaller increments over every week, because it's a lot of information. It's like information tsunami happening. What can we do to kind of break that up a little bit?
Yeah, and I liked the operational meeting because you got all of that information at one time. Mm-hmm. But it was an overload of information, and it put a lot of people where there was just so much going on that when you walked out, you couldn't remember what all you had heard, and so on and so forth. And it shortened the amount of time that each team could present.
Sure.
So with doing it this way, each team gets 10 minutes. They don't get it once a month. Now they may get it once every 6 weeks.
Yeah.
But that 10 minutes versus a 5-minute segment, you really have a lot more options that you're able to present with.
All right. So excuse me. We start out with a positive thing. We start our prayer positive thing. And then each of the departments, or a couple of departments each week, are going to present something. Where do we go from there?
So after that, and I put it on mute, so I don't know why.
Siri wanted to join the conversation.
After that, we go into one of two things. Mm-hmm. We either stay together and we have a full team process meeting, or we split. And when we split, it's usually the operational side and the technicians that split. Basically, you can almost split it as the people that are here in the office and the people that are out on the road.
Yep.
Those splits can grow also. Sometimes we'll split access control technicians and locksmiths. I know that sometimes on you guys' side, y'all will split different departments up for smaller meetings. But that's when we can do the technical training.
Yep.
That's when we can do hands-on lab training with the technicians. There's so many options there because you don't feel like you're wasting other people's time when you split into the smaller groups.
Yeah.
And that's what we use the last hour of the meeting for.
So you slot out an hour of time frame to go through any type of technical training or split it up. But oftentimes we keep everybody together to go through some process improvement exercises, some team building exercises or things of that nature. But that's kind of the structure is the start. Then we have a couple of different departments present, and then the final hour of the meeting is dedicated for something, either split up or stay together, but working on something.
Yes. And that last hour, like you say, when we stay together, it's to me, it's a lot of fun because we get to do a lot of the team building activities, and we get to have some really neat discussions as far as if we're trying to work on a process that everybody in the company is involved in.
Yeah.
That's when you get a lot of really good feedback.
So team building, because I think that's something that it's a buzzword, and I've read some stuff and like we're going to have trust falls and stuff like that. That's not what we've been doing, but we have done several different team building type exercises or problem solving type exercises as a group. So do you have any examples that we could share with people that say, hey, these are some things that we've tried and this is what the outcome of it was?
My biggest thing about doing team building is not to be reactive with it, but try and be proactive with it. Obviously, if communication's a problem, you can do a team building on communication, but you don't want to base it around an issue that you just had.
Yeah.
You want to base it around going forward. So when we're thinking about doing these team building activities, we want to base it on something going forward, not, hey, this happened and it was bad.
Yeah.
So we did a team building and that's supposed to make it better, because I feel like if it's reactive, you don't get any feedback from it.
Sure. So do you have any examples of some of the activities that we've done?
One of the ones we did just a few weeks ago talking about communication was we had a two different groups of people move like 8 or 9 items off of one table all the way through the back of our warehouse to another table that was 3 rooms away.
Yeah.
And they were only allowed to talk to the one person that they handed each item to and had to describe to them where that item was going to go on the other table.
So it's kind of like the game telephone, but on steroids.
The game telephone on steroids with items and with a measurable. You had a picture of the first table, and then you're standing there looking at the second table going, oh, wow.
Yeah.
We could have communicated that a lot differently. And it highlighted the fact that there's so many people that touch a site visit that we do.
Yeah.
And one piece of communication missing can really create an issue down the line.
Somebody editing one little line of information can really change the trajectory of how it ends up.
Absolutely. One suite number being wrong.
Yeah.
Just the one letter being wrong in a suite number, how far and how many people that impacts going down the line.
Yeah, it was very interesting to watch and be a part of, and to see. We did it, I think, 4 times. So there were 2 groups, and they both did it twice, and the change. The way they communicated and how they made their improvement from the first to the second time was pretty incredible.
Absolutely.
Just very quickly understanding, okay, this is how I can communicate this information better. You saw people go, they would gather an item from somebody, listen to them, start walking to the next person to hand it off and go, hold on a second, what did they say? Turn around and go get clarification on it, which is that's not abnormal in a day-to-day process for a business. Get clarification and make sure it's right.
One of the ones to let the cat out of the bag that we're going to do in this week coming up is we're going to have people that have a picture, and the person standing back to back is going to draw that picture. with the explanation only being communicated verbally.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a lot of fun to see how we can communicate just one-on-one. Now you're talking about being able to slow down and give the information in a way somebody else can get it versus give the information to where it can be passed down the line. And it's just practice and communication, different ways to think about communication.
Yeah.
Prior planning prevents poor performance happens in communication. I think more than any of us know, we just have to keep planning for the communication to be better.
So back-to-back drawing exercises coming up. That's fun. Those are fun to watch.
I'm really looking forward to it.
All right. So we have our conference call on Monday mornings. We have our all-team meeting on Wednesday. And then that's an hour and a half. So 7 a.m. to 8:30. And we also include breakfast in that. I don't think we mentioned that. But we do feed everybody, and we definitely have coffee.
Yes. So there's always coffee and there is breakfast. And one of the things that we had talked about wanting to, just to let everybody know about is we always have media in at least the first part of the all hands meeting, and we run that through Google Slides.
Yep.
So there's between 2 and 10 presenters each week. With the old meeting, it was up to 10. Now it's usually 2 or 3 presenters. But those presenters can work on their slides by themselves, and then pop those slides into the all hands meeting, and their slides in the order where they go, and it makes it very easy for them to be able to present. Where before, I know that you had said that y'all spent lots of time prepping for that meeting.
Yeah, we would, and a lot of times it ended up being late on Tuesday evening preparing for something on Wednesday morning, which was not the best way, but it was the way that it happened during that time of the business growth. I can tell you from past experience, having a published agenda or published structure of the meeting to go by was very, very impactful and beneficial, because we didn't have, as we were trying to build it, you just would kind of get off base, or you wouldn't make sure you took care of all of the things that you needed to. So once we started having an agenda, it was very beneficial. And we've done that in a couple of different ways. When we first started, it was just this point, maybe on a piece of paper. Then at a point when we had a projector or a screen in the room, then we would publish it up there so we could show some visuals. Then at a point, we switched over to using Evernote. Several years ago, Evernote added a feature where you could basically put it into almost like a PowerPoint type presentation. And so we started using that. And that was the way that we followed through on everything. And we were able to keep all those notes and be able to distribute them. And then our current iteration, when we moved to Google Slides, it was so that we could have a published presentation, and it could be something that everybody that was going to be utilizing it could have the collaboration to get in there, adjust their slides, and then it was ready to go on Wednesday morning without a whole lot of headache or a whole lot of work.
Yes.
Somebody logs in, hits present, and we go.
And one of the things that we had to change once it went to that format that we're still working on today, we're definitely not perfect at, is defining the expectations of how long your segment should take.
Yeah.
We failed at that miserably last week, but it was a good learning point for us that we were planning on having an hour to do the discussion that we were doing, and we ended up with about 30 minutes. And it was all because we did not define the expectation of how long those 10-minute presentations should take.
So just for wrap up there, a printed or published agenda, the way that you're going to have it, and structured time frames for each item so that you can stay on track.
Absolutely.
All right, and then the outcome of that is making sure, and this is something that I'll say we struggle with quite frequently, and I take 1,000% responsibility for it, but ending the meeting on time is something that I struggle with a lot, but we try to hit that 8:30 time frame to dismiss and honor that. And oftentimes we go over a few minutes, but we used to go over a lot longer. But
we've gotten a lot better at not going over. But it's just like anything else. If that meeting goes over, even though that information was impactful, it then impacts the rest of the day.
Yes.
So the service manager is immediately impacted. All of the technicians that have appointments are impacted, and that does impact the entire team. So we're trying to learn from that mistake and get better about rolling out at that 8:30, and then we try and get our techs to set another time that by 8:45, that gives them 15 minutes in the office to collaborate and do what they need to do, and we're trying to get them to hit the road by 8:45 each day.
All right, so we start off with our kind of conference call on Monday morning, get everybody on the same page real quick. Wednesday morning, 7 to 8:30, all team. this is what's going on in the company. These are things you need to be aware of. These are what the different departments are working on, and this is how it impacts us all. And then at 9 a.m. on Wednesday mornings, we have a smaller huddle with our leadership core.
Yes.
What is that about?
So the leadership huddle is really, really neat because everybody that sits around that room works together every day here in the office, but that's the one time a week you really get to have everybody together. So that is basically, this is what I have going on in my department.
Mm-hmm.
This is where I'm at as far as meeting my goals and my benchmarks that I'm trying to meet.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the things that I need help with.
Sure.
And that's the big one to me. That entire meeting could be summed up with, I need help, and I right now have everybody in the room that can help me unpack that.
So we focus on 4 things with that. Each department is their benchmarks, things that they're working on, if they're hitting those or missing those, something that they may need help with, something that they are working on right now, or that the next big thing that they're working on, and then a big win.
A big win.
Something that they've accomplished based off of the information they're looking for. And it's timed. That is a 30-minute meeting. That is 9 a.m. to 9:30. There's things that happen after that. So we are very structured in that time. Each person's supposed to take a couple of minutes. Some people borrow minutes from other people, Levi. But other than that,
we've got one guy that usually runs 5 to 7, but everybody else takes about 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And at one point we were timing that. And one of the things that I really like about that meeting is that's a technology-free meeting. The first part of our Wednesday morning meeting is also a technology-free meeting. And when I say a technology-free meeting, I mean that people are not on their phone.
Yeah.
Their laptop's not up. We eliminate that technology, and I think that helps people be engaged. This society has changed, and when that device is on, it's harder to engage immediately. I see it with my children more than I see it here at work, because that next generation is going to have a much bigger struggle with that, because that device just takes your mind away from what you're interacting with.
Yeah. So having some structure behind that, and that's one that we're focused on, kind of making each department aware of what the others are working on, so that we can try to stay in unity as we move throughout the week, and asking for those helps. That, again, that idea was borrowed from something that I learned from Asa Abloy. They have departmental stand-up meetings where they actually have a room that they have project boards on. And so each head of each department comes in and says, hey, this is the progress as we're moving along through these different projects. It's timed, and that's the structure that they operate under. And when we heard that, I was like, that's something that we can definitely tweak and apply to our organization, even though it's not the same exact thing. It's just that theory and that concept. And I can say we've been doing that, I want to say, close to 2.5 years now. And it has sped up the nature of our business dramatically, because you're getting those people in that room on a weekly basis, and you're having a pulse, essentially a pulse meeting on a weekly basis. And it creates so much more motion. If someone needs help on something, you know that you're only 5 working days away from getting help, and you see that. And you see people, one of the side benefits, and I've told a lot of people this, one of the side benefits when we first started that, people would ask for help, and then they would ask for help again the next week, and ask for help the next week after that. And we started to try to track that and recognize that. And then over time, a couple of months in, you started hearing people, or you would see people solving the problem with their colleagues on Tuesday before the Wednesday morning huddle. So I want to make sure we got this taken care of. And then now it's very infrequent that somebody says, I need help with something. But when we first started, it was weekly, multiple people were asking for help.
Yes.
So it really changed how we communicate and get things accomplished.
I also think that with having the Wednesday morning meeting, and then with having that meeting afterwards, most of your Wednesday morning, as far as being an office staff, is taken up with those 2 meetings.
Yep.
But between that second huddle and lunch, I think there's so much productivity that happens, because you just heard the I need helps.
Yeah.
And people don't want to let it linger. So it happens right after that meeting.
Let's get it knocked out.
Let's get it knocked out, and let's get moving on. So I would say, as far as a productive day here at Loc-Doc Security, Wednesday is probably our most productive day in that aspect.
So we focus a lot on these things here, trying to communicate. One of our core values is consistent communication. we're definitely not perfect at it. We've been talking a lot about that recently. Having the same message repeatedly throughout our organization, that's something that we're focused on trying to continue to improve. And these are components that we've put in place to try to make sure that those happen, and they've been happening for years. So Monday morning conference call, Wednesday morning all team meeting at 7 a.m., a huddle that's been happening for about 2.5 years, I think, at 9 a.m. And that's some of the key fundamentals of how we get business done on a weekly basis.
Absolutely. And like I said, that the one builds on the other, which is really, really nice. The Monday morning call does set you up for Wednesday. Mm-hmm. That's one of the things we do talk about that I'm not sure that I mentioned before, but one of the things that's talked about on that Monday call is what's going on Wednesday morning. If there is a big kind of training, we've got a vendor coming in that's going to give a product training. I know that a couple of weeks from now, it's time for us to do our IRA stuff, so he'll be coming in. Mm-hmm. Those kind of things we like to let people know about so that they're kind of mentally prepped for it. And then after the Wednesday morning meeting, when we go into our leadership huddle, the leadership just heard what's going on in the Wednesday morning meeting, so they're better prepped for that leadership huddle to help us finish out the week.
One of the last questions I would ask is, because you're maintaining a lot of the coordination of that now, and we've done this, I mean, there's probably a dozen different iterations of the scheduling process, but we have found that prior planning ahead on those meetings is the most effective way to do that. So we've tried a couple of different examples. We've tried series for a month. So, all right, the month of January, we're going to talk about this. The month of February, we're going to talk about this. We've tried the small group rotation where we've had 3 or 4 different classes going on simultaneously, moving around. And we've had predetermined topics for the entire year. We did that one year. We had like 45 different topics that we went through.
I remember that year very vividly.
And at the end of every year, we get feedback. Okay, so how did that work? Was that beneficial? And on that particular year, it was like, okay, we talked about a lot of things, but we never were able to get into details because it was very high level, and we moved on to the next thing. So you couldn't really saturate it. And you also have people that are coming in the organization at different levels or different parts of the year, so they miss those other components. So, but anyway, the scheduling part of it. What are things that you're doing now to start planning for 2020 for meetings and how that's going to look, so that we can have a focus on it?
So one of the big things that we just did was we put a 2020 wall calendar in the training office. And on that wall calendar, it's going to be based around our goals, what we want to accomplish first. Yep. And we'll be able to back the information that we're going to train on into that. So it's being reactive in a way, but it's being reactive with a goal. So if the goal of January is going to be communication, we can look at what happens in December, and then we can set our trainings based on that, where you're not just being reactive. This happened this week, and we change training all around to react to it. If the goal of February is going to be technical, then we can look at what happened through the first part of the year and make sure that we're working on those items that we need, being at least a month out, so that we can better prep for it and be better prepared to give that information and to let that information set in a couple of weeks. If it's just concealed vertical rods, for instance, is something I know in February we're going to work on, but we're having issues with it now. Will I work on it some before then? Of course, with guys that need help, but most of February I want to work on how to adjust them and how to get guys set up in the technical side.
So another question that I would have on that, or maybe a tip to add into that, is some of the things that we've tried over the years, some different segments, I guess, that we've had in our meeting that we have ultimately excluded from our meeting now, because I think at a point we realized that the meeting could easily turn into a soapbox meeting, for lack of a better example. But basically, that we came in there to be reprimanded for things that happened throughout the week, and that was a strategic shift, because going back to the one positive thing, it was probably correlated around in that same time frame. But how do you see that where we are currently And as we're planning for future, that it doesn't turn, that it's corrective where we can fix things that need to be corrected, but it's not a reprimand meeting where you're just bringing everybody in a room to smack them on the wrist.
I'll give you a good example of that. Is we used to literally put our every warranty job we had up on the wall on Wednesday mornings, and we read through them. And we didn't actually put the tech's name, but through the conversation of why was this wrong and what happened, that everybody knew exactly which guy had the warranty call. And it was a reprimand session. Yeah. And when we got away from that, now when we talk about warranty, we actually get a better response.
Yeah.
Because it's not a slap on the wrist. It's a, hey, we see this trend.
Yes.
And we try not to address every warranty call that we have, because a lot of them could be one-offs. But if we see an issue, like I said, with concealed vertical rods right now, then we try to address that.
Yeah.
Versus addressing each individual job, we try to address where we see common things that are happening on a regular basis and make those things better.
So the takeaway on that is avoid calling people out in the middle of an all-team meeting. Those are one-on-one conversations that you have, but when you do have the group, you have the ability to set a tone and say, hey, this is the way that it should be done. We'll handle the one-offs on a one-on-one conversation.
Absolutely. That's exactly the way that if you present it that way, you get a lot better response.
Sure, definitely. All right, so we've had a really, I think, very action-packed conversation here with a lot of tips. So just kind of a recap real quick. You're saying schedule in advance, utilize technology. We use Google Sheets. We use Google Slides. We use Ring Central for our communication. We also, I guess one of the things that we didn't mention is on Wednesday morning, we also broadcast or live stream our meeting to several people that are working remotely or not in the meeting. So we use some technology there to be able to share that. And then saving the information and having that for past meetings as well, having kind of an archive of what we've talked about in the past. Those are definitely some things to be mindful of as you're trying to think through and build your team meetings. Anything else that you would like to kind of leave the listeners with to say, hey, this is one other thing that you may need to be mindful of as you're getting ready?
And I've said it a couple of times. I think one of the biggest things about having a team meeting is just not being reactive. I don't think that we've ever got good response out of being reactive. When we're proactive, when we're looking forward and when we're trying to make things better, we get so much better response out of our team that the times that we are reactive, and you have to be at times, you don't get as good a response.
Yeah. I would second that. There was a time, this was many years ago, and it's one that I keep in the back of my mind a lot. I had a reactive team meeting based off of some things that were happening. I brought everybody in on I think a Thursday evening or a Friday evening or something like that, just to reprimand everybody as a group. And it was horrible. Like, I mean, hindsight, if I would have, it's an embarrassing thing to admit, but it was a horrible mistake that I made trying to correct some major issues. And all it did was deflate, create defeat, and just cause frustration amongst the people that were there. And this was, good Lord, probably 10 or 11 years ago. But it was one of the lessons that I learned of, okay, this is not how we initiate positive change. This is just
a mess. Just
chewing people out for no reason, and you get no major benefit out of it. So I think I agree wholeheartedly. Don't do that and create positive change in the future.
And obviously being positive in the meeting, it does take a different mindset on Wednesday mornings, especially if you're the presenter for an hour.
Yeah.
I have to start getting ready for that Tuesday evening.
Oh, yeah.
I have to start setting up the energy to be able to present for an hour in front of a room of between 15 to 35 people and keep that energy up for that hour. It's almost like an athlete. That it sounds funny, but it's almost like an athlete. If you're not mentally prepared for it, you will not keep the stamina and the energy up that you have to keep that room positive.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to get up there and be groggy for that meeting because you're going to bore everybody.
The person that's in front of that room is 100% setting that tone. And if that tone is set groggy, that's exactly what the entire room's going to feed off of.
Very true. And also make it really cold in there. All right. Thank you very much, Thomas, for your insight and your input, because it's very valuable. I think hopefully we held true to the concept of business practices and strategies, because this is something that we specifically and are intentionally focused on a weekly basis. If this is your first time watching or listening to the podcast, we've got a slew of these great topics just like this available for you. So you can subscribe if you haven't already. If you're listening on iTunes, we ask you to give us a 5-star review if you liked the topic, if you liked the concept. And if you have any other suggestions or ideas or any other things that you would like to hear on this podcast, we definitely welcome that feedback and input. If you would like to leave that information in the comment below, wherever you're listening or watching to this, we definitely read all that and apply it to our future scheduling for this particular podcast. All of the information is available at Loc-Doc.net/podcast. You can subscribe to all of the major podcasting platforms there. And this is also available on Facebook, YouTube, in the video format as well. So you can see Thomas and myself sitting here having this conversation. So you can definitely subscribe and make sure you follow us on those platforms as well. But until next time, thank you very much for all of your support, all of your feedback, and thank you for listening and watching to the Coffee Break Podcast. We'll see you next time. To learn more about the topics discussed today and to connect with us online to hear all of the episodes available, visit Loc-Doc.net/podcast.
We got so much to say. We got a podcast to make. We're sipping on lattes, and it's time for a coffee break. It's time for a coffee break. Oh, yeah.
The Coffee Break Podcast is brought to you by Loc-Doc Security. We'd love to connect with you online on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Just search LOCDOCINC.